Good afternoon to everyone. I welcome all of you to the 58th lecture in the lecture series in nonlinear dynamics conducted by the Department of Nonlinear Dynamics, Bharathidasan University with the support from RUSA 2.0. I am happy to introduce today's speaker, Professor Ginestra Bianconi from School of Mathematical Sciences, Queen Mary University of London, UK. Professor Bianconi obtained her PhD from the University of Nottingham in the year 2002. Immediately after that, she spent a year at Department of Physics, University of Freiburg, Switzerland. She then moved to ICTP, Italy, and continued her postdoctoral work about 6 years. She then moved up to United States of America and worked as an assistant professor at Department of Physics, Northeastern University. She then came back to Europe and joined as a lecturer in applied mathematics at School of Mathematical Sciences, Queen Mary University of London. In the year 2013, she has been elevated as a reader in the year 2015 and promoted as a professor in Queen Mary University of London in the year 2019. Professor Bianconi also working as Alan Turing Fellow at Alan Turing Institute since 2018. Professor Bianconi is working on statistical mechanics and network science, including network theory and its interdisciplinary applications. She has formulated the Bianconi-Barbasi model that displays the Bose-Einstein condensation in complex networks. She has formulated the statistical mechanics of network ensembles, and she has proven their non-equivalence. She has made important contributions on the study of critical phenomena on networks. For the past few years, she has been focusing on multilinear networks, simplical complexes, network geometry and topology, percolation, synchronization, and network control. She has written a couple of books entitled, the first book goes with the title Multilayer Networks, Structure and Function, which was published by Oxford University Press, and the second book goes with the title Higher Order Networks, An Introduction to Simplical Complexes, which was published by Cambridge University Press last year. Professor Bianconi has been awarded as the Fellow of Network Science Society. She is serving as a chief editor of the journal Complexity, published by IOP, Institute of Physics, UK. In addition to this, she is acting as an editor in the journal Chaos, Solitons and Fractals, PLOS 1, and Scientific Reports. Besides the above, Professor Bianconi is also an editorial board member in the journals Frontiers in Interdisciplinary Physics, Computational Social Sciences, and Frontiers in Fractal Physiology. Professor Bianconi has published more than 175 papers, and her work has appeared in major scientific journals, including Science, Nature, PNAS, PRX, and PRL. She has H-index 60 and citations around 19,000, which is very high. When I inquired Professor Bianconi about the possibility to deliver a lecture in this forum, she immediately gave a date. Thank you, Professor, for accepting our invitation and interacting with us. With this short introduction, now I invite Professor Bianconi to deliver her lecture. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you so much for the very kind introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so just a moment. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So it's a real pleasure, as I said, to be here with you, and thank you so much for the invitation. Today, I would like to speak about the recent work that we have been doing in my group, relating higher order network, their topology, and in particular their nonlinear dynamics, which I think is relevant for this lecture series. So, in network science has been a framework which has been very successful for understanding the underlying structure of complex systems, where the nodes are the elements of the complex systems and the links are their interaction. However, networks have a limitation, and this limitation resides on the fact that the interactions are only pairwise, while a number of complex systems include higher order interaction, in which the interaction are between two or even more nodes. And these are captured by generalized network or higher order network, which include hypergraphs, simplicial complexes, which are a subset of hypergraph, and also network with triadic interactions. So this higher order network data is becoming more and more available, and of course, a way to see higher order interaction is, for instance, in collaboration network, for instance, between actors in a movie or between scientists that write a paper together. Often papers include two or more authors, or you can have face-to-face interaction between a group of individuals. These are individuals in a museum that have a face-to-face interaction as they go along the exhibition. But the higher order network are also important for biological system, and in particular in brain data, when you want to distinguish between three regions of the brain interacting pairwise, leading to three correlation, or activated at the same time, leading to a three-body field triangle interaction. And in biology, also in protein interaction, you have group of protein that perform a function, or you have also in neuroscience, for instance, this triadic interaction when you have one node, for instance, the glia here, which directly interact with the signals between other two nodes, for instance, the neurons. And such triadic interaction are also observed and studied a lot in ecosystem, while they are still not explored much in the context of statistical mechanics or nonlinear dynamics. So all these interactions are interaction between two or more nodes, and they can be captured by higher order networks. And I have written a book which is a sort of introduction to the topics, with a special emphasis of the interplay between topology and dynamics. It covers quite a number of results, but I see this as more as a possible inspiration also for the young generation than a book that it's exhaustive of the theory that is there, because most of the theory in higher order networks need still to be constructed, and I think the field is booming, and I recommend young researchers to go into this field because it's very rich and there are many possibilities. And if you want to read some shorter account of why higher order interaction are important, you can read this perspective article in Nature Physics, where we present a collective point of view, and we, with many authors, and we present the results showing that actually higher order network can host a dynamical variable not only on the nodes, but also on the links or on the triangles or on the tetrahedra, so that really these topological signals, as they call, make the higher order network dynamically alive, because you can have dynamics taking place at simplices of different order. And these dynamics, for instance, the dynamics defined on the links, can be projected on triangles or projected on the nodes. So you can study also this projector of their dynamics. And here in this talk, I will discuss more about that. So hopefully this will become clear by the end of the talk. Of course, in order to study the interaction between higher order structure and dynamics, you need good models. And over the year, we have done so. So we have a very rich framework of emergent hyperbolic geometry, which is called network geometry with flavor, which can define manifold, as you see here in two dimension, hyperbolic manifold, but it admits as limiting case the Barabasi-Albert model, the Bianconi-Barabasi model. It includes the Apollonian graph, so it's graph that can be scale-free, exponential, with community, with clustering, all property that are desired when you represent complex systems. And then we have another set of model which are instead maximum entropy model, such as the configuration model of simplicial complex, or the exponential random simplicial complex, which enforce soft constraint. So we have these different models, and these are very good to play and define a dynamic on it. Of course, you can also use to define the dynamics on real data, but these are control structure that allows you to modulate and change some parameter and see the dynamics. So when studying the interaction between network structure and network dynamics, a lot of emphasis during the year has been put on the combinatorial and statistical property, for instance, how the degree distribution change, epidemic spreading, or synchronization dynamics. But actually, when you have a higher order network, the picture is much richer. And it is emerging that is not only the combinatorial and statistical property that are important, but also simplicial geometry and simplicial topology. And this further characterization of the structure of higher order network are particularly reflected on the spectral property of higher order network, which on their turn determine the dynamics, and in particular the nonlinear dynamics of this network. So let me just mention one of the first direction we have explored in my group, that is the role of how simplicial geometry affect dynamics. And in particular, I discuss the role of a spectral dimension, which I'm not know if you are familiar with this concept, but is a very interesting concept that is related to the spectral property of the graph Laplacian. So for now, we only speak about the network of interaction, but we took a higher order network, which is highly geometrical. So it comes from this geometry which are described by the higher order network. So of course, I don't need to emphasize the importance of synchronization here in this audience. Of course, synchronization is one of the fundamental dynamical processes that affects neurons dynamics, or also fireflies. There are also applications in condensed matter. And one of the key models for synchronization is the Kuramoto model, in which describes synchronization of non-identical oscillator. Each oscillator is typically placed on the node of the network and oscillate with its own frequency, each node with a random frequency that is different from other nodes. So there is no coherent state if there are no interaction. And then the network, so the edges of the network, define the interaction between the nodes. And this interaction has a coupling strength sigma. And when the nodes are interacting, the face of the node tries to align with the faces of the nearby nodes. So as a function of this coupling constant, you can have either the faces in an incoherent phase or the phase in a coherent phase, indicated by this order parameter being non-zero also if the network is infinite. So we started working on this problem of the relation between synchronization property and geometry with an experimental group in neuroscience that, and we wrote this paper in which there is experimental evidence that actually neurons grown in 2D slice and neurons grown in 3D scaffolds have different synchronization property. And this is the correlation matrix. And you see that in 3D, there is more synchronization. This is 3-dimension favors synchronization of these neuronal networks. So we went on and looked a little bit more from the theoretical point of view. What is the correct notion of dimension that is likely to affect these dynamics? And we went back to the property of the graph Laplacian, which express diffusion dynamics, and also is very important from synchronization because it describes the linearized dynamics of the Kuramoto model. And the graph Laplacian is semi-definite positive and has one eigenvalue, the smallest positive eigenvalue, which is also called the Fiedler eigenvalue, which is typically considered very important because if it's finite, it describes the inverse of the relaxation time to equilibrium of the linear dynamics. But actually in lattices or in network with a geometrical property, this Fiedler eigenvalue can go to 0 in the infinite network limit. That means that you would say the time scale goes to infinity, or the gap closes, we say also. And in this case, it is also possible, like in lattices, that the density of eigenvalue close to 0 scales like a power law with an exponent that depends on an index that is called the spectral dimension. And the spectral dimension is equal to the dimension of a lattice in the case of a lattice. And in this case, it's not only the Fiedler eigenvalue that is important, but a hierarchy of small eigenvalue, which are described by this power law, that is important. And what we have proven is that actually, if the spectral dimension is smaller or equal than 4, then synchronization of the Kuramoto model cannot be thermodynamically stable. And so what we have done is that we have looked at this network geometry with flavor, this model that I discussed before. And as a function of a parameter, capital D, we see that the spectral dimension, so the slope of this cumulative density of state changes in the simplicial complex, in the network of this NGF. So if by running synchronization on this different NGF, we can monitor the effect of changing the spectral dimension on the network. And these are the results. So you see that in all these cases, you have either no synchronization here, so not even phase entrainment, but in dimension D equal to 2, you have this spatial here you see temporal oscillation of the order parameter, and you have also spatial oscillation of the order parameter. And if the coupling constant is large, it seems to be stationary, but actually this is just a finite size effect. So if you enlarge the network size, this frustrated synchronization is the one that is dominating. So you really don't achieve synchronization in this limit, while in D equal to 3, still you have this frustrated dynamics, but this is the borderline because here you have a spectral dimension 4. So as soon as you go in the dimension 1 higher, you will have a stable synchronization phase. So this is a proof that our results work in this context. So what we have explored then is also the relation of topology, how topology can affect nonlinear dynamics. And in order to do that, let me just introduce a little bit of algebraic topology. So topology describes the shapes, and the invariant of the shape. What is invariant in a shape if you stretch or compress a shape? And some of these invariants are the Betti number. So the Betti 0 is the number of connected components. The Betti 1 are the number of one-dimensional cavity, like in a circle, or the Betti2 is the number of two-dimensional cavity as the sphere. So what is inside the sphere is a two-dimensional cavity. And of course, the Betti numbers are important. For instance, if you want to characterize this fungi network, it's clear that here you want to devise method to characterize this cycle there. Is an important feature of this object. But this cavity, these Betti numbers, can be calculated using algebraic topology. That is a way to use algebra to describe these invariants. And what you use is that the simplices that are set of n+1 nodes of your higher order network have an orientation, okay? So this orientation, so a link from 1 to 2 has a different orientation than a link from 2 to 1. So this is not the same as direction. This is just an orientation, because an orientation implies that there is always the opposite orientation. And with these oriented simplices, you can build M-chain, so linear combination of these oriented simplices. And for instance, one chain will be, in this case, 1, 3, minus 3, 2, minus 2, 3, so essentially 3, 2, and then 2, 4. So you can go from a linear combination of simplices to actually something that is a topological interpretation. And on this linear space, the M-chain, you can use boundary operators. And so the boundary operator acts on each simplex by giving the simplices at its boundary. So it acts on a link by giving the node 2 minus the node 1, or it acts on the triangles by giving the link 1, 2, 2, 3, and minus 1, 3, because you want to go around the triangle with the orientation of the triangle. So for this reason, this operator is called the boundaries, because of a map M chain to the M-1 chain at its boundary. And an important property is that the boundary of the boundary is null. So for instance, if you have a triangle, the boundary are the links around it, but then this is a cyclic chain, and there is no boundary of this cyclic chain, because practically there is no boundary, okay? So there is no start and end, it's close to itself. So there is nothing to worry about this boundary operator. They're just representable as rectangular matrices. So B1 as row, the number of nodes, and as column, the number of links. And for each column, the element is the boundary of this link. So the boundary of 1, 2 will be 2 minus 1. And here for B2, the row are the links and the column are the triangle. And each column is the boundary of the triangle. So the boundary of the triangle 1, 2, 3 will be 1, 2, 2, 3, minus 1, 3. So the choice of the sign is totally dictated by the topology. And if you concatenate two of these incident matrix, you get 0, because the boundary of the boundary is null. And from this, you can construct also homology group. So for each chain, you define some homology classes such that a chain is in the same homology class of another chain, which differ only from the boundary of a simplex. So what happens is that the rank of this homology group is just the number of independent cycles that you have in the network. And so this is exactly the Betti number. And from that, you can use this algebra to characterize the structure of a network. And for instance, persistent homology is a technique to do so quite effectively, and is a field that is booming. There are a lot of results. This is on point cloud, but there are a lot of results also on network. So you study how this cavity persists as you change the simplicial complex and you include more and more higher order interaction. Here, though, we are not very interested in the structure, but most on the dynamics defined on these simplices. So the dynamics not only define on node, but also on link of a network or on triangle of a simplicial complex. And these are called topological signals. Topological signals, for instance, can describe in a collaboration network where you have a team of 3 authors, how many citations this team of 3 authors has got. So this is not like the citation of each individual person, but is the citation of a group. So it's assigned to the triangle. You can have a flux biological transportation network, synaptic signal in the brain, or edge signal. And you can also have a vector field. So for instance, speed of wind at given location or current at given location in the ocean. These are vector, right? Defined on different nodes of a triangulation of the surface of the Earth. And then this vector you can project on the links of this triangulation and then treat it as topological signals. So these topological signals can be treated with algebraic topology. So first we noted that the graph Laplacian can be expressed with the incidence matrix as B1 transpose. And actually what happens is also that you can define operator acting on higher order topological signals or describing diffusion from link to link or from triangle to triangle using higher order Laplacians or Hodge Laplacian, which are constructed using higher order incidence matrix. So for instance, if you want to describe diffusion from link to link, you can go through node or you can go through triangle, okay? While for the graph Laplacian, you go from node to node through links only. When you are higher order Laplacian, you can go either 1 dimension up or 1 dimension down. And this leads to the decomposition of the higher order Laplacian in ln down and ln up. And the dimension of the kernel of this operator is the Betti number. So this is the connection with topology. Another property of this higher order Laplacian is that they obey Hodge decomposition, implying that for any signal, for instance, defined on the links, you have a unique way to decompose the signal into a gradient flow, you know, starting from a source and or going through a sink. You can have an harmonic component along the cavities, or you can have a curl flow or solenoidal component. This is a unique way, and in this way you can treat topological signals of higher dimensions, so defined on links, triangle, and so on. And we will see later how you can use this higher order Laplacian to define the higher order Kuramoto or topological Kuramoto model. Let me also mention that with this higher order Laplacian, you can have higher order spectral dimension in some cases. For instance, you can have this Apollonian or pseudo-fractal simplicial complex, which are constructed starting from a triangle, and either adding a triangle to any link added at a previous step, or adding a triangle to any link added at any time step. And you can do this also in higher dimension. And in this, for this object, you don't have just one spectral dimension of the graph Laplacian, but you can have a set of spectral dimension which can differ if you consider diffusion going from node to node through links, or from links to triangle, or from triangle to tetrahedra, and so on. And we can also, in some cases, in some regular cases, predict this higher order spectral dimension. And these, of course, have been shown in this work with Joaquin Torres to affect higher order dynamics. So diffusion in higher order, going from link to link through triangle and node, or from triangle to triangle, and so on. So higher order Laplacian are important to define diffusion of signals of a given dimension, but you might also have diffusion of signals living on two different dimensions. Okay, so you might have diffusion of node and link signals, and the correct operator to act on topological signals of different dimension is the Dirac operator, which I explored recently. And so the Dirac operator acts on a topological spinor. So this is a vector which has a block structure, and the first block is a function defined on the node of the network, and the second block is the function defined on the links of the network. So psi is the combination of these 0 cochain and 1 cochain, so function defined on the nodes and on the links. And then the Dirac operator acts on this direct sum of the two signals of node and links, and what it does is project the signals of the links into the nodes with this boundary operator B1, and project the signals of the nodes into the links. So here, in order to project the links into the node, it acts as a divergence, and in order to project the signals of the node into the links, acts as a derivative. And the beautiful property of this Dirac operator is that the square of it is a Laplacian matrix. And so the Dirac operator can be considered as a square root of the Laplacian. And you can really study the eigenvector and the eigenvalue of this Dirac operator. You can visualize with colors on node and links on a fungi network, for instance, or this other fungi network, and you can study the spectral property of this operator. And you can also define the Dirac operator on a simplicial complex. So, for instance, in a three-dimensional simplicial complex, you have this structure where you can use also B2 and B3. And when you study the dispersion relation, you find different bands, energy bands. And so one is corresponding to signals defined on node and links. The other is corresponding to signal defined on links and triangles, and so on. And this Dirac operator is very useful and interesting to study dynamics of topological signal of different dimensions. So we are in my group studying Dirac synchronization for this model, and we are studying Turing pattern using the Dirac operator and many other problems. So that it's really a fruitful operator to play with. So let me just mention one of the main results we got on higher order collective phenomena. So how these topological signals that are there in real data might actually undergo collective phenomena. For instance, synchronization. And the question is whether topological signals can undergo, of non-identical topological signals can undergo the synchronization dynamics. So where can we have a higher order topological Kuramoto model? And this is work with Ana Paula Millán and Joaquín Torres of 2020. So we discussed already the Kuramoto model on a network where the phases are associated to the node of the network. But actually, we are interested in extending that and considering a topological Kuramoto model in which the phase might live on the links or might live on the triangle of a simplicial complex. So So we have these topological signals, and the first thing we realize is that the standard Kuramoto model can be written in matrix form using the incidence matrices. And so theta now is the vector of the phases associated to the node, omega is the vector of intrinsic frequencies associated to the node, sigma is the coupling constant, and here this sign function is taken element-wise. So in order, what we want to define, so here the phase on the nodes are coupled to phase of the node if they share a link. So what we want to do is now define the higher order Kuramoto model for phases associated to n-dimensional simplices. For instance, n can be equal to 1, and then we have an oscillating flux of a link. So here, so we can define phases associated, the dynamics of phases associated to links that are connected to phases associated to links if they share a node or if they share a triangle. So where this omega hat is the intrinsic frequency of the link, for instance, and here the same function is taken element-wise. So when you have this higher order dynamics, an important question is, what is the dynamics in use on n-1 simplices, for instance, on nodes, and what is the dynamics that induce on n+1 phases, for instance, on triangle. And in order to do that, we can act with a discrete curl or with a discrete divergence. And then when we do that, because the boundary of the boundary is null, the equation that we wrote before decompose into two uncoupled equations for the dynamics projected on triangles or the dynamics projected on the nodes. And these two projected dynamics are depending only on the irrotational and the solenoidal component of the original signal. So when you study this order parameter associated with this projected dynamics, you see that there is a collective phenomena there emerging, and there is synchronization of these two different components of the signal, the irrotational and the solenoidal separately. And you can also use directly the signals defined, let's say, on the links on your n-dimensional simplex, but you need to filter out the irrotational component and the solenoidal component, and you can do that by using the Ln down and the Ln up operator. This is a very simple operation, but is an operation that is needed to see the phenomena. And a bit like is a big like the corresponding of a Fourier transform, but is needed to see the phenomena. Otherwise, you don't see the synchronization of these two different components. So you really need topology. You really need to define what is the right filtering that you need to do to reveal this higher order synchronization. And a question that emerged here is how to couple these two projected dynamics. So the first thing we have done is a global coupling. So coupling the part of these dynamics which relates the phase of, let's say, link connected to triangle with the order parameter of the projected dynamics on the nodes and vice versa. And when we study the projected dynamics of these dynamics, then these projected dynamics are not anymore decoupled because the dynamics on triangle depends on the order parameter of the dynamics on the nodes, and vice versa, the dynamics on the nodes depend on the order parameter of the dynamics on the triangle. And this leads, interesting, to an explosive synchronization transition. So this is simulation on the configuration model of simplicial complex. And we see also this effect when we do the filtering and we look at filtering with ln up and ln down. And this is the result if you don't do the filtering. So if you don't do the filtering, you would see nothing. You really need to do the filtering to see this phenomenon. And these are simulation on real connectome of Homo sapiens and C. elegans, and we see this discontinuity there. And we also applied to NGF, and we saw this discontinuity there. So a question is, can we also couple topological signals of different dimension? And so we have done this with my student Reza Gorbanchan and Johan Restrepo and Joaquin Torres. And we tackled this by considering topological signals defined on the nodes or defined on the links, and couple again with these adaptive dynamics, a little bit more generalized. And in this case, we see the simplicial complex really turning on at the same time in different dimensions. So you see the signals on the node, the signals on the links projected on the nodes, and the signal of the links projected on the triangle that all turn on at a discontinuous phase transition. We have a good theory to capture the backward transition and the discontinuity on Poisson network and power law network. This theory is based on the annealed approximation for the network, which is valid for this random network. And finally, we have recently worked on Dirac synchronization. So the fact that the dynamics can be actually not just dictated by the Hodge Laplacian, but directly with the Dirac operator, so that the signals on the node depends on the signals of nearby links. So this is a local coupling, local and topological coupling, and the signals of the links is coupled to the nearby node locally. And in this way, we have a phase diagram which displays a discontinuous forward transition and a continuous backward transition. And interesting, you have two order parameters, but these two order parameters now are totally coupling the node and link signals. So actually, this order parameter depends on alpha, and alpha is a linear combination of topological signals of node and links. So the dynamics is really very much intertwined between node and link signal. And another property that we have is that this collective phenomena that we observe correspond to a rhythmic phase in which the order parameter, the complex order parameter, oscillates at constant frequency in the complex plane. So, for instance, if you have a constant value of sigma, you would have here a circle essentially in the complex plane. But if you study the desynchronization phenomena and you slowly and adiabatically reduce the value of sigma, you see this spiral in that describe the desynchronization dynamics. And we believe that this rhythmic phase is very interesting and could potentially shed light on some topological mechanism for the emergence of brain rhythm, because these are very slow frequency emerging at a global scale. So this concludes the part on the effect of topology on dynamics. And as you see, it's a very rich phenomenology, and there are a lot of interesting results in this respect. I have still some slide. I don't know how much time do I have. I mean,
yeah, you can go. You can take 10 more minutes, madam.
Okay. So I hope I will make it. So about this direction, how the combinatorial property affect the higher order dynamics. So, and we have a recent PRL on using higher order dynamics to study co-location in epidemic spreading using hypergraphs. And we have also work studying percolation, collective phenomena of percolation with cooperative effects in a correlated hypergraph described by a multiplex network, in which one layer is only pairwise and the other layer can be higher order and so on. But what I want to discuss is a recent work. Sorry, this is not the right citation. Sorry, I just is there by mistake. A recent work in which we have one node affecting the interaction between other two nodes. And so this triadic interaction can be positive or negative. So for instance, a species can enhance or inhibit the interaction between other two species, or a glia can change the synaptic interaction between two or more neurons. So here our attention is not only in this triadic interaction, which are new in statistical mechanics and nonlinear dynamics, but also on their sign. And we know that the sign of the interaction can really change dramatically the dynamical processes of some collective phenomena. For instance, the easy model becomes a spin glass. Here we want to show that this sign triadic interaction really change percolation dynamics. And this is work with my very talented student, Anlin Soon, Filippo Radicchi, and Jürgen Kurz. So percolation studies what happens to a network, to the giant component of the network, when the links are randomly damaged with probability 1 minus p. So in a random graph, you would have that the giant component, as you increasingly damage, decreases and go to zero at the percolation threshold here with a second order phase transition. And these are the corresponding equation. So here we consider a network with triadic interaction. So this is more or less a network of networks in which you have one network, which is a node and structural links. And then you have a regulatory sign network between each node and each structural link. So these are this dashed line. So we assume that regulatory interaction determine which links are active, and structural interaction determine which nodes are active. And a node is active if it belongs to the giant component of the structural network, and structural links are active if they are connected to at least an active positive regulator node, and they are not connected to any active negative regulator node. So we define a regulated percolation process in which we have two steps. At each time we have two steps. First step, we consider the giant component of the network, and all the nodes are active if they belong to the giant component of the network. And at step 2, we deactivate the links that are connected to at least one active negative regulator node, and they are not connected to any active positive regulator node. And we also introduce some stochasticity, and because all the other links are damaged still with probability 1 minus p. And then we go back to step 1. So this is a description of the model in which you might have at the beginning all the nodes active, and then since this node is active, this link will be damaged at the next step, and since this link is damaged here, at the next step when you measure the giant component, this node will not belong to the giant component, and if this node is not active, then this link will be suppressed at the next step, and so on. And here you see that at time 2, you have the same configuration that you have at time 4. So here you really see some blinking of the network. And this is captured by our theory. So at step 1, we have the percolation equation, mean field equation. And at step 2, we have the regulatory equation. So we can measure what is the probability that the node is active at time t, given the probability that the link is intact at time t minus 1, and then measure the probability that the link is intact at time t, given the active probability that the node is active at time t. And so this, we can construct the cobweb out of these dynamics with this map. And this leads to this oscillation of the order parameter. So the giant component, size of the giant component oscillate between 90% and 50%. So you can really see something in action here. So this is the giant component that is oscillating in a periodic fashion. And interesting enough, you might also have period doubling, and you might also have chaos of the order parameter, meaning that in time, the giant component, the size of the giant component oscillate, and also the component itself oscillated in a chaotic fashion in a network. So the phase diagram that used to be this second order phase diagram with just from 0 to non-zero now becomes an orbit diagram in which you have a period doubling and a root to chaos. And these are the theoretical simulation just with 3 equations in a mean field approach. And these are the Monte Carlo simulation with 10,000 nodes. And actually, here, the degree of freedom are much more than just 3. So it is an exceptional agreement of the theory with simulation. And also the simulation, the process is stochastic, while the theory is deterministic. So there are many differences. And so we saw that this phenomena is also occurring for topology that are drawn from a real network. So we use a mouse brain network with random regulatory interaction, and we see this period doubling or chaotic behavior here. And in absence of negative regulation, the time series goes to a steady state, and you can have a discontinuous phase transition. So the phase diagram is still rich. So you have a discontinuous hybrid phase transition, which is very interesting, but you lose this time-dependent phenomena. So I reach my conclusion. Higher order interaction are ubiquitous in complex systems and capture the topology of higher order networks. And so these topological signals are really amazing to play with and make simplicial complex dynamically alive. You can treat these topological signals with Hodge Laplacian or with the Dirac operator, which is able to capture the topological signals of different dimensions at the same time. And then you have this sign triadic interaction that are also quite interesting and can turn percolation into a fully fledged dynamical process where the order parameter undergo period doubling and root to chaos. So I want to conclude here by thanking all my collaborators, people that have been in my lab at some point in time. I mean, we have not such a big group, but over the years, the group included several people and a good network of excellent external collaborators. And I end also by mentioning that I'm a chief editor of IOP Journal. We have an excellent editorial board. And this is an open access journal, but there is a fee waiver, actually up to 2023. And so we hope you really submit your excellent research here. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. So now the forum is open for discussion. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, Ginestra, thank you for your nice talk on higher order interaction. I have one question. In the last, last work, you got the chaotic behavior of the order parameters and period development out to chaos. Yeah, so my question is, when the order parameter shows period 2 or period 4, so what is the physical significance of this order parameter, which was period 2 or period 4?
Okay, so the order parameter, I'm sorry, I don't have a slide. I don't know, let me see. No, I'm sorry, I don't have a slide here to show you the order parameter is the size of the giant component. So here you have your network, right? And you have the links, and this is a connected component, is the largest one. So it's such that from any node, you can go to any other node by following the links in this component. And the order parameter is how many nodes are there in this configuration. Okay, so when you regulate the link and you see the movie, you see that this connected component, the largest one, change in size. So the order parameter is the number of nodes in this connected component.
The order parameter, number of nodes in the connected component.
In the largest connected component, yeah.
Largest connected component. So what is the meaning by period 2?
Period 2 means that this is chaos, and period 2 means, as you see here, that the number of nodes is, I don't know, 50 and 30 and 50 and 30.
And in chaos, we usually said that the system is sensitive dependence on initial conditions.
And
so is there anything on initial condition?
The configuration might depend on the initial condition. Yes. So what we observe is that the most general case is this kind of diagram in which you have the bifurcation on two sides and a discontinuity here. But then, depending on the parameter of the model, but also the initial condition, you might actually observe that, for instance, the zero solution might be stable until here. Okay, so you might have a zero solution stable until 0.5, and then you have immediately chaos, and then you have only this part of branch of the dynamics, or you can have the incoherent space only stable until here, and then you have immediately period 2, and so on. So yes, we are exploring this, but the phase diagram is quite rich. But in general, we see that the scenario is that the most general has this bifurcation coming from large P and for small p and merging in the middle. And then it might happen that depending on the parameter of the model or the initial condition, then the zero solution becomes the stable one, because the zero solution is always there in percolation. So it might become the stable one at some point. So this space diagram might be cut at some point.
Yes. So my last question is, if we calculate the Lyapunov exponent in your bifurcation diagram, so it will show positive value for chaotic state or not?
So what we characterize for the moment is we characterize the Sorry, I realized that I was not sharing my screen. So yeah, but
Yes.
yeah. So this figure, you can have 0 up to here and then the chaos immediately, or 0 up to here and then the period 2 and then this branch. So the 0 solution might be stable up to a point, might become stable further. Okay, so you might not see the whole bifurcation diagram. And yes, for what we calculate essentially is the instability for the onset of period 2. We didn't calculate the other instability of this orbit diagram. But we have a good, for this instability of the period 2 oscillation, we have a good agreement with the theory, with simulations.
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you.
So any other clarifications or questions?
Can you explain what is this Dirac synchronization?
What is?
Dirac synchronization?
Yes. So I don't have the slide here with the formulas. So practically, okay. So here you have the dynamics on nodes and links. So forget now about this adaptive coupling. So put all R equal to 1. Okay. So this is the dynamics of the simple Kuramoto model on the nodes. This is the dynamics of the higher order Kuramoto model on the links. So these uncoupled dynamics of node and links can be also expressed with the Dirac operator, because the Dirac operator is related to this boundary matrix B1 and B1 transpose. So practically, this uncoupled dynamics is already a dynamics which can be expressed simply with the Dirac operator. But what we have done is that we have coupled practically the higher order Kuramoto model. Yes, this is for the node, right? And this would be for the links, okay? But assume that you are in a network, so that, for instance, there are no triangle, then you would have, and n is equal to 1, then you would have B1 transpose B1 here, and for the node, you will have B1 transpose here. So this can be written as vector defined on node and links is equal, the derivative of this vector of phase of node and links is equal omega minus sigma Dirac sine of Dirac over these phases on node and links. So you can combine these dynamics with these dynamics using the Dirac operator. And what we have done is that we use also so higher order power of the Dirac. Instead of saying phase of node and links are intrinsic frequency, coupling constant, Dirac sine of Dirac phase of node and links, we say the derivative of phase of node and link will be the intrinsic frequency, sine of Dirac, sigma Dirac, sine of Dirac minus gamma, which is a matrix Dirac square. And so in this way, we can we have a coupled dynamics in which it's not only node coupled to node through links or links coupled to links through node, but you can also have a dynamics in which the links are affected by the phases of nearby nodes, and the nodes are affected by the phases of nearby links.
So is it necessary to introduce the Dirac operator?
Yeah, we instead of having the boundary operator, essentially, we have the Dirac operator, and we don't have just here inside the sign function. We don't have only the Dirac, but we introduce a phase lag, which depends on the Dirac square. And then this phase lag, so we have the dynamics of the node is affected by a phase lag that depends on the phase of nearby links. And the dynamics of the links has a phase lag that depends on the phase of nearby nodes.
Okay.
So we introduce a phase lag, and this phase lag is introduced with higher power of the Dirac operator. And yeah, I realized I should include the equation, but I've not done it.
So
Yes,
this phase lag equivalent to asymmetry. You're introducing asymmetry into the model.
It's quite symmetric, but yes, but there is a sign difference at a certain moment because, well, so what happens is that, yeah, so it is important what is the linearized equation for these dynamics, and because the linearized equation can have different phase portrait. And so we want a linearized equation that has a stable focus. And this leads to this rhythmic phase, because also the linearized equation in some sense has some oscillation due to the fact that the linearized phase is this focus.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
So the paper is almost accepted, and so I think the version that is in the archive is practically the one that will be published. So first author is my student Lucille Calmon, and collaboration is with Juan Restrepo and Joaquin Torres. I can put it in the chat maybe.
Any other question?
Yeah, I can put it in the chat. Yeah, let me just
ask the audience. So are there more questions? So we are not getting any questions. So let us conclude the session. So since we are not getting any questions, I would like to conclude the session by thanking Professor Ginestra Bianconi for accepting our invitation and giving a very wonderful talk. Thank you, Professor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Bye-bye. Bye.